Welcome, Craig.
Well, thank you, Amy. Thank you, Jared. I'll get rolling here. As Amy said, my name is Craig Anderson. I lead the construction team here at Solver, and my role today is to pull it all together. And I'm going to be talking about automating the financial reporting and planning process with Solver's X FP&A solution. I'll speak a little bit about the company, reiterate some of the challenges within the industry and what the office of the CFO faces, and then how Solver addresses these challenges, give you a quick product tour, and then, of course, Q&A. Hopefully there's lots of that. So about us, Solver's been around since 1996. We started as an on-premise, what we call a CPM solution, Corporate Performance Management. It's now branded as an XFP&A, Extended Financial Planning and Analysis Solution. So you might hear me use the terms interchangeably. We're headquartered in the US. We got about 15 offices globally. We launched our SaaS product in 2017, and we were one of the first companies to do so globally. You'll see us on G2 pretty high on the leaderboard. Encourage everybody, if you have an opportunity, to go out and take a look at some of the comments from our customers. So a little bit about the challenges. I think Joel did an awesome job kind of setting the table at the beginning of this. If you missed it, there's just a ton of influences right now, right? Between inflation, energy prices, fear of potential recession, uncertainty of tariffs, where are we heading? But it's the office of the CFO that really has to make sense out of all this and execute their strategic decisions, right? And information is key. And within the construction industry, we have a number of unique other challenges, right? Cash flow. Cash is king, and it's super what I call lumpy, right? I mean, you got a lot of upfront costs. Vendors want to be paid at 30, or DSO, days sales outstanding. Days sales outstanding is typically more in the 70, 80 plus day range, right? So if you've got one project, it's challenging, but if you've got dozens or hundreds of active projects, it really is a challenge to manage this at the corporate level. Revenue, you have multiple long running projects that might span uh, multiple years. We talked about employee recruitment and retention, or at least Joel did, what some of the material and labor costs are doing today. And the difference between our estimated margin, right? When we get in and we put together a bid and we take a good look at what this margin could be, and we compare that to the actual margin towards the middle or the end of the project, there's typically some fade that occurs. So how do we, at the top level, gain visibility into this? And of course, there's always some potential supply chain disruptions that are still occurring and project delays. So it's a real challenge to get a good handle on this at the top level. And how is it being done today? Yeah. What we see, I mean, we've implemented thousands of customers, and it's typically a pretty manual process that's involves heavy use of Excel. And Excel's great, right? If you're going to drop in a CSV and do some slicing and dicing at just a local level, it's fine. But if you're doing it at the top level, you end up with a lot of challenges, right? You might be adding new accounts, departments, divisions, projects. You're going to break links. It's really challenging to roll up the data. There's no drill down at the transaction level. You end up with what we call multiple sources of truth, right? Lots of data silos. It's just pretty cumbersome. There's a lack of accuracy, visibility, and control in the process. And rather than the planning and analytics process being performed continuously, right? We've seen that with construction management systems, payroll, AP automation, there's a ton of data flowing into the system on a daily basis. And instead of performing this top level analysis daily, it's only performed periodically because it's so painful. And people end up spending more time reconciling than they do analyzing. So our solution, the Solver solution, XFP&A solution, involves a cloud-based data warehouse in the center. That's our single source of the truth. It's hosted by Microsoft on Azure. And we have a pre-built connector to Acumatica we can get data flowing into the system in a couple hours. But we have the ability to pull data in from any source, whether it is on-premise, SQL-based, or cloud-based. The goal here is to combine as many sources as possible into our data warehouse so that you can slice it and dice it. And the four main pillars for Solver are on the right-hand side. It's planning, reporting, consolidation, and analysis. Consolidation might be just the data within one organization. It could be multiple organizations, minority interest. It might be a gap currency translation, or even FASB. There's a lot of possibilities there. But this is all handled through distribution to executives, managers, and stakeholders through a browser. So there's no more emailing. There's no more need to email Excel files around. It's self-service. People log in and get the information as they need it, when they need it. The really important to point out that the designer, there's going to be a handful of designers in any organization. Our report designer is an Excel-based add-in. And, you might have dozens or hundreds of people consuming information, but there's usually a handful that are creating these report templates. And our report designer was created by accountants for accountants. So if you've got folks within the organization today that are using Excel, it's a very easy transition to get them up to speed on Solver. We also have some pre-built templates that will help you accelerate the implementation. And at the end of the day, our goal is to give you more time for analysis and strategic decision making. Time to take a look at what we have in Solver. Oh, look at that. Good morning, Craig. It thinks it's morning still, and for me it is. This is our landing page, and I can access our recents and my favorites here. But I'm going to navigate this way through our report categories. And in this case, our report categories are a combination of input templates and reports themselves and KPIs. So we've got them grouped by planning examples from the source, right? You might have GL, AP, project, SAS, whatever it might be, and reports by subject. And I'm going to start off here at the top level and take us into a KPI report. And the KPI report, we've got a lot of them. The KPI report I'm going to start with is this one here. It's just an interactive dashboard. It's important to note that these are runtime parameters. So whoever designed this report and published it, set it up so that I can change the period, I can change the entity, and I can run this for any budget or forecast scenario that has been set up for me. Okay. And let's take a look. This will increase the real estate a little bit here. So I'm looking at total revenue right now, monthly, year to date, and a full year estimate. I can see what the current year actuals are, last year, and budget, and kind of get a high level snapshot of how the company is performing and expected to perform throughout the year. I can also switch my view. This has been set up for total revenue, but I can also run it for gross margin. And if I see anything in here that looks not good, like in this case, I might look down at my labor productivity and I'm seeing a big drop between this year and last year, year over year, something's going on. So if I navigate back to report templates, and I've created a focus report, where a focus report has been created for me. And again, it's got the same similar parameters, the period, the entity, and the budget scenario, but these parameters can be whatever you need. I can take a look at labor productivity hours and see that certainly, we've got an issue between this year and last year. I can look at the root cause and see that my labor cost percentage is way out of whack. And I can also see that the top influencers are these particular projects. And that gives me a little bit of heads up as a CFO. I can go drill into these particular projects and see what's actually going on. Now I'm going to take a different view here. I'm going to get out of the KPI reports and start looking at a departmental forecast. So imagine I manage a department, and I want to take a look at my expenses. And in this case, the parameters that are set up for me are the period, the entity, my department. And I'm kind of a super user today, so I've got access to all departments. But if I was the lead of the engineering department, that's all I'd have access to. Right? So I log in and I get access to what I need to see, but only what I need to see. And again, I have the ability to look at a different forecast or budget scenario. And what I'd like to show in this report is the report date is as of September, and we run it. It pulls in actuals through September, the forecast for the rest of the year, shows us a combined forecast for that department, and then dollar and percent variance versus budget. And what's really cool about this is once the month is closed, I might want to run this for period 10. I just change the report date here, run it for period 10, and I don't have to do any exporting or importing. The report automatically pulls in actuals through the report date, forecast numbers for the rest of the year, and again, gives me that analysis of budget versus actual. And if I want to look at a different forecast scenario, any of the forecast scenarios that I've already created are going to be available. Right? And this is part of looking forward in today's environment. There's no real ability to predict the future, but we can look at the different scenarios that might develop and anticipate what we may be encountering in terms of revenue and expenses and model that. The modeling and the planning is really important in terms of the scenario management, and we just make that a lot easier to accomplish. Go back here, and that's a departmental. We'll look at the pretty similar here at the top level. There's a P&L forecast at the corporate level, and what you're going to see is a very similar report. It's just in this case, I have access to everything, and it shows me forecast for the entire year. If we have drill down capabilities within Solver, so however the transactions are loaded and however many there are. In this case, we've got pretty limited transactions in our demo data. So we've got one transaction per department. If there were hundreds, they'd all be in there. And you'd see information like typically it's going to be AP information on expense, right? So it'd be vendor ID, vendor name, voucher number, voucher date, dollar amount, those sort of attributes would show up associated with that transaction. Back here, I'm going to show you now, I'm going to go into a project forecast. And this is a little bit different view of the organization, right? Again, we've got the period, the entity, the budget for the current year and next year, and we put in a range of projects. And in this case, we've got the projects in rows between active, awarded, and potential, and some information, kind of some work in progress information across the top. And this is, whatever you need it to be. And I'm going to shrink that down and show you that we also have the revenues and expenses associated with each one of the projects. And typically this is going to be information that is read in from Acumatica, right? It might come from Job Planner and it's fed into Acumatica. And it gives you a kind of a high level view of how these projects are going to play out over the next couple of years. But it also gives you the ability to do some what if analysis, right? There's some potential projects that may or may not happen, right? So if we want to start budgeting revenue and expenses for these projects, we can, and we can save it to a different scenario and start mapping out what might actually happen in the future. Okay. The kind of one of the big areas for every company, regardless of the industry, is going to be personnel, right? And how do we model the payroll expenses for the company across all the different projects that we have in play? And we're going to pull in information from MITRE or whatever system you have. This particular template here, this is what we call an assumptions form. And these are kind of the global assumptions, right? Like we might be operating in 3 different states. In each state has a different SUTA rate and a different max. We can put in our FICA rate and our caps. We can put in our 401k, what our matching and our limit is, and all the different benefit rates or dental insurance, health insurance, vision, any of these that are typically set at the beginning of the year and are going to apply to a year. These are our global drivers. And we also build in, so we can get pretty granular with our modeling, how many days in each one of the months, right? And that's going to come into play when we actually model out our personnel by department. And this is under the assumption that I'm a department manager. I'm looking at just my department, or I might be responsible for multiple. And I'm going to model out a certain scenario here. And this is where we typically do an import, a manual import from a system like MITRE or your payroll system, right? And it's going to give us a starting point. So we know who the employee is, what their title is, their hire date, how many hours they're going to be working. But it gives us the ability to model things like pay increases that might come into play in a certain month, right? We have a pay increase scheduled in March. We're going to give these folks a 10% increase. What does that do to payroll? And over here, it's going to feed into it's going to feed into your overall budget. These cells are typically locked at the top level, and we often do our planning here within the payroll template itself. Right, so you can model out your to be hireds, when they're going to come in, what their pay rates are going to be, and just play it forward. And so this is a typical payroll scenario where there's going to be an assumptions form, and then the actual personnel planning itself. And all this rolls up once we've got everything planned out. We got our revenue and payroll and everything modeled out. The department manager, in this case, I'm a department manager again. I'm going to come into my particular department, in the engineering department, and I've already entered my budget. And this is kind of that litmus test, right? This is going to be this particular template allows us to flag any expense. In this case, I'm saying 20%. If it's 20% favorable or unfavorable versus last year, flag it. I want to see it. And as a manager, I know this budget is going to get rolled up for approval. I can come in here and make the comments and specify before it's approved, before management has visibility into it, or even as they have visibility into it, why is this above or below? And if I want to get a little bit more granular and look at anything that's 15% more or less, it's very easy to come in here and do that. And I can make the changes and save it back. And again, it's specific to a certain budget or forecast scenario. Right? And as at the corporate level, once this is all done, we roll this thing up typically before the budget's approved. Somebody's going to come in here and take a good look at the entity, the combination departments for a particular budget scenario, and determine, how is this looking at the top level, right? So we put together a dashboard, which is kind of a set of KPIs for your budget versus target for the big items, revenue, margin, EBITDA at the corporate level, right? What the revenues, COGS through EBITDA are for the current year, next year's budget, and what the variances are, and also compared to target. You want to do some target setting, and as well what is going on at each one of the departments. So it starts off with a tab that gives us a high level dashboard. We can look at any of the details, either consolidated or right down to the individual departments. And we've also got a tab that shows us, remember that variance, right? Anything 20% above or below, whether it's good or bad, I want to know what's going on and why. So all those comments here are visible to managers or execs before that budget is approved. And we typically do our approvals all through workflow. We've got a fairly comprehensive workflow capability that's set up in Solver. Now, finally, I'm going to take us into where am I going to go next? I'm going to go into a couple KPI reports here and project reports. The project reports, we can set them up by an individual project. So if I want to drill in and take a look at an individual project and how that project is doing, as an exec or as a project manager, I have access to that, right? Or maybe at the top level, you just want to take a look at a WIP report that combines everything together. And that's what this is, right? This is a list of all the projects that are active right now. What that description is, um, the cursor is back this way, what the original contract was, change orders, what the total is, what cost to date are, current gross profit, percent complete, all the way across to what the expected margin is going to be on this project. We can feed in comments from daily field reports, right? Maybe this come from Job Planner or out of Acumatica, or perhaps you're just setting it up for the site manager to input manually. It's any possible combination. But what's going on that particular site, who the manager is, and when they last updated their comment. So it just gives me, as a CFO, a little bit more visibility into what's going on. And if this is a report that I want to see on a daily basis, right? Because all this information changes daily. We have the ability to create jobs that run on a daily basis. All right, so I'm going to call this my daily WIP. Oh, look at that! I created that before. WIP report. I can pick the particular template that I want to run on. Project overview. What my parameters are, who my recipients are. I'm going to send it to myself and to one other person. I can send this out via email. It's a static file. Or I can also just send it out to the report archive. And in this case, I'll do both and overwrite that one. And then I have the ability to set this up to run at some predetermined schedule. And I'm just going to ask to run this thing daily at 6 a.m. every day. Right. So once this is set up, we just save it and run it, and away we go. That's going to feed my inbox every morning at 6 a.m. with a WIP report. So I hope that gives you a little bit of insight into what Solver is all about, and how you can potentially automate not just your AP, payroll, construction management aspects, but also the financial reporting plan.